Good morning. Welcome to Northern Lights Radio News. I'm Beth Kidd. This morning we're going to be speaking with our friends from United Way. They stop by to get on what's going on in the world as we come up on Christmas season. But first, we're going to be speaking with Hal Runkel. Hal wrote a very interesting book, Screamfree Parenting. We're speaking with Hal Runkel. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he also wrote a book, Scream-Free Parenting. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. What prompted you to write this book?
Well, there's just a lot of bad parents out there.
Yeah, well, yeah. Other than the obvious.
No. I'm a family therapist. I work with clients, and something I've been doing with clients over and over again. But the thing that struck me was, there's so much good relationship material out there about how relationships work, how they really change, but it's still couched in academic language or it's written poorly, and I wanted it to bring it in a language that's memorable and actually, just by reading it, begins to put stuff into effect.
I like the way you began the book. You began the book with a story about the Waffle House.
Painful story.
Would you tell us? Would you share that with us?
Sure. Well, my kids were 4 and 2 at the time, and I was the so-called expert doing the scream-free parenting, right? And it was one of those Saturday mornings where my wife and I had stayed up too late on a Friday night, which guarantees that your kids get up too early on a Saturday morning. It's just a recipe for how it happens, And so there's a lot of whining, there's a lot of complaining going on, and the kids were upset as well. And so I said, you know what? Let's get out of the house. Let's go to Waffle House, change of scenery. And we're from Atlanta, and Waffle Houses are everywhere. That's where it began. And now this place was packed. Saturday morning Waffle House, packed to the gills, hour wait. We're not going to do that. So we get back in the car. Kids are really whining. My daughter, she was a little bit 4 at the time. My son was really 2 at the time. So we get back in the car. We drive 100 yards or so to the next Waffle House. And this place, same thing, packed, but this place was thinking. Had pictures, had pieces of paper set aside with crayons, and if a kids drew a picture, they got a free waffle. And they had these hats that the waffle man wears, So we're playing, and before you know it, we're seated. So there's this unwritten rule among those of us with more than one child that whoever's sitting on your side of the booth is kind of your territory.
Oh, yeah.
And so my wife and daughter enjoying this angelic scene of peace and harmony, they're feeding each other their waffles, and there's little birdies floating above their heads. Meanwhile, my son and I, it's World War III, nothing is making him happy. He's throwing the fork, and it hits the leg of the guy sitting on the booth across from us, and I'm sorry. I'm shaking my son, saying, you better, because he needs to get calmed down, right? And finally the waffle comes, and I think, okay, this is going to help him. He's going to be happy. I start to cut the waffle up. He doesn't want the waffle cut up. I don't know. He's going to eat it with his 2 hands. Who knows? He's just being 2. Mm-hmm. He takes the entire plate with the waffle on it, shoves it off the table. The plate breaks. The waffle splatters over everybody's legs. I yank him up. I'm infuriated. I yank him up. His leg, when I yank him up, hits the back of the head of the guy sitting in the booth behind us. I'm sorry. And I'm yelling at him, and we're storming out of the place, and I'm puffing out my chest and yelling, getting him calmed down because he needs to get control of himself, right? So there's this architecture that's the same in Waffle House. It's floor-to-ceiling windows, and I didn't think I pushed open the door as hard as I did until it slammed against the glass wall, and now the whole wall is reverberating. So everyone's watching us from the inside as I'm outside on the sidewalk, and I'm pointing and yelling and doing whatever it takes to get him calmed down, right? So finally, somehow the scene does calm down. We traipse back into the Waffle House, and we sit down. My son's kind of sobbing as he's starting to eat his waffle. Now I look across the table, and I know my wife is trying to be supportive, but she's got this smirk on her face.
The spousal smirk.
Yeah, and I'm just a volcano at this point. I'm like, what? And she just says very calmly, nice hat. The entire time I still had this silly, stupid paper Waffle House hat on my head while I'm pointing and screaming and doing whatever it takes for him to take me seriously. And
right.
I've got this silly Waffle House hat on while everyone's watching us. And, thankfully I had the wherewithal at that point to realize that it didn't take the hat to make me look silly. I was doing that all on my own. Because what I was doing was getting reactive. And that's a word you'll hear me say a lot. Because what I was doing is I was acting just as immaturely as my son, with the hopes that in doing so, magically he would act more mature than me. And that's what we do. Whether it's screaming, which is what most of us do, or some of us just totally do the opposite. We shut down emotionally and can't be approached. There's lots of different ways that we get reactive to our kids. Maybe we, go behind them and pick up after them, or we let them off the consequences early. We give them parole to a consequence early because we can't handle watching them suffer. Or we rescue them from school or whatever. There's lots of different ways to get reactive. And it all comes down to, am I under control myself? Or am I needing their behavior to control me? And that's the position we put ourselves in, where I need my kids to behave a certain way in order for me to remain calm. I need my kids to get the right grades. I need them to get on the honor roll so I can put the bumper sticker, on the back of my car. I need them to behave while we're out in the temper tantrum. I need them to go to bed on time. I need this from them.
You're giving them a lot of control, aren't you?
Exactly. People talk about kids are out of control these days, out of control. Well, it depends on what you mean. What really that means is I'm out of control, because I'm giving all the control over my emotions over to them.
Let's rewind that Saturday morning.
Sure.
What would you have done differently?
I probably wouldn't have gone out to eat in the first place.
Okay, but you did.
Sure,
and as
sure.
you said, your son was being a 2-year-old.
Sure, he was just being 2. He was, acting like 2-year-olds. But the problem was, so was I. What I would do is what I've done in public now. They're old, much older now. Is, take them to the bathroom. Leave. Do something. But no matter what, I'm going to remain in control of my behavior, because it's not about their behavior. It's about mine. And so the question that the book starts out by saying the greatest thing we can do for our kids is learn to focus on ourselves.
I thought that was an interesting concept, because you're raised to believe that you put others first.
It's everybody first, right? It's everybody first. And that's what we're raised to believe. Exactly. The problem is, if I'm putting everybody first, then secretly I'm needing them to reciprocate. It just happens that way. And whatever I focus on, I inevitably try to control. So the more I'm focused on my kids, then I feel responsible for them. I feel responsible for making them behave the right way, think the right way, feel the right way. And that just means I focus on them more. And I begin to orbit my whole life around them. And, we believe this lie that says once we have kids, it's all over. My life is now all over. It's all about the kids. And so women, forget about being a woman. Just, put on the denim jumper and the kids' shoes and get the minivan and just say goodbye, because it's a life sentence. You're a mom from now on, and that's all you are.
That's a terrible way to look at it, isn't
it?
It's a sentence.
But that's what happens. And then we need our kids to do well, because that validates us as a parent. That's the problem about putting someone else, quote unquote, first, is I'm needing them to do well to validate why I'm putting them first. So many of us at the end of the day, we're like, man, these kids just don't seem to appreciate all these efforts we're making on their behalf. I'm sacrificing my life for theirs, and they just don't seem to appreciate it. And then we begin to resent them.
They didn't ask you to do that.
Exactly. I was giving my presentation to a group of moms, and a woman through tears came up to me afterwards and said, you know what? Before my mom had us, she was a concert pianist, world-class concert pianist. And after she had us, she never let us forget that. And it was never done in this resentful way. It was always, well, I love you so much that I gave up the concert halls of Europe for you guys. Think of the pressure that we put on our kids.
So if you're anything less than perfect, you're a failure.
Exactly. And you ruin my life as well. So you ruin 2 lives. That's what happens when we, quote unquote, put them first, is we orbit our whole lives around our kids, not realizing we're giving them the impression that the world revolves around them. And then we have the nerve to call them self-centered.
Of course, then when they get out into the world and realize that it's not all about them, then you have some very messed up adults.
Well, and that's why they're 25 and living at home now.
I see.
So I think we do a disservice to our kids by saying, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want to do. No, you can't. You can't be 25 years old and living in my house. It is not a career path for you. Unfortunately, my kids, they had some friends of theirs, and their parents were getting divorced. And so they came to us and asked, Daddy, are you ever going to leave me? My daughter came to me, she's 8. Are you ever going to leave us? Like, no, I'm never going to leave you. But you're going to leave me. And my whole job is to get you ready to leave me. That's my whole job in life. It's not to hold you tight enough so it validates me so that I feel better about myself as a person. It's what can I do to prepare you for life outside of this house?
What is a cool parent?
What I believe is every kid wants cool parents. And that's not hip to the latest styles. You try that, it makes you very uncool. And it's not let them do whatever they want whenever they want. No, kids crave structure. Absolutely. They crave structure and freedom. And that's our job to provide both. My wife, she teaches seniors in high school, and she practices Screamfree teaching as much as she can. It's the same principles. It's not trying to control all these kids. It's making sure no matter what, she's in control. Because that's the best way of having an influence over these kids, And so at the end of each year with her seniors, she asked them to write an essay. What makes good parenting? And it's amazingly uniform in what they say. Just don't freak out. Remain the adult. No matter what melodrama my teenage life goes through, just keep your cool. And they'll even say, have a life of your own. Have a life of your own. Don't come to all my games, for crying out loud, Have a life. It's amazing what these kids say, and they're aware of it, but what they're aware of is that we put so much pressure on them by orbiting our lives around them.
Do you think then when they become parents that they do precisely what they're asking their parents not to do?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll do the opposite of what our parents did. If you had a parent that was too encroaching or too intruding, didn't let you have privacy, you know what? A lot of times you will stand back and give your kids too much freedom, or you can't be too close to your kids. The alcoholic father has the teetotaling son who has the alcoholic son. It's just extremes lead to other extremes. That's why, in the first half of the last century, we had children are to be seen and not heard. And then you had the exact opposite reaction the second half of the century, is everything's all about the kids. My whole life is about them. And that was too far. Having a balanced perspective where, I am not, and here's what I say in the first chapters, I am not responsible for my kids. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous. Of course I'm responsible for my kids. Who else would be? Well, as you know, parents of teenagers all have the same complaint. The teenagers don't take responsibility for themselves, for their actions. Well, how can they? Why should they if I've been taking responsibility for them their whole lives? Which ultimately means they don't make really a choice on their own. Ultimately, if they make a choice, it's just my fault somehow. If they make a bad choice, somehow it's my fault because I'm responsible for them. Instead, I say I'm not responsible for my kids and their choices. They are. I am, however, responsible to my kids for my choices, for how I behave, for how I conduct myself, for how I take care of my body, for how I treat their mother, for how I structure my household. Those are my responsibilities to them. And I need to spend a lot more time thinking about those than thinking about their responsibilities.
Yeah, I mentioned to you I have an adult child, and I have a child at home. One of the hardest things for me to do was let go of that clean room thing.
Oh, boy.
But I learned so much now with the second one, I just quietly closed the door.
There you go. Oh, my gosh. It's beautiful. And I actually say the exact same thing in the book is, you know what? I cannot call it my kid's room and then still act like it belongs to me. There's an inherent disintegrity somewhere, and kids recognize it. And so, in a way, their only way of recognizing it and doing something about it is to make the room as messy as possible. Even if it's miserable for them, they will do it. And it has nothing to do with cleanliness. It's this battle between us.
Battle of wills.
Yeah, exactly. Whose space is this? You know what? You've said it's my space, but then you're constantly telling me what to do with my space. It's like giving them an allowance and then telling them how they have to spend it.
When do you recommend starting allowances?
Today.
Okay, for a young child.
Today.
Okay.
Absolutely, even if it's a penny. Because, again, my job is to not be the barrier between them and their freedom. My job is to be the architect of that freedom, to help shape it. So I give them more space, more than they ask for, more freedom than they ask for, because I know that with freedom comes responsibility. You know what? Honey, it's obvious that you love your bike. You know what? It's obvious you love your bike, and that's great. You've left it out in the driveway again.
Okay.
And instead of me ranting and raving and telling her what to do all the time, I just give her a choice. Recognize what choice she actually has. You know what? You can bring it into the garage and put it up. That's wonderful. Or you can leave it out. I will respect your choice to leave it out. But I just want you to know that if you leave it out, then I'm taking it to Goodwill in the morning. And if you want a new bike, you'll have to use your allowance and save up to buy a new bike. That's an adult responding to her in a way recognizing that she has certain choices and consequences for what she does with those choices.
So have you ever had to bring a bike to Goodwill?
Yep, had to do a scooter. And, the toughest part was not buying her a new one.
That's part of the biggest thing on being a parent is the follow-through.
Oh, my gosh, exactly, because we don't like to watch our kids suffer.
Right.
But we do our kids such a disservice by saying, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. That means I'm robbing them of the chance to learn the same way I learned. And I try and live by that. Okay, what mistakes do I actually want my kids to make?
What mistakes do you want your kids to make?
I want my kids to make a frivolous purchase with their money, with $40. I want them to make that and have buyer's remorse now so that they don't have to do it with $40,000 later. I want them to talk behind their friend's back and have it come back to them now, when the consequences of that are not going to be that severe. I want them to lose their bike to Goodwill so they can begin to learn that, you know what, privileges and material blessings take responsibility. I want them to learn that early on so they don't have to learn it when it's much more severe later on. I want them to learn that talking back to their mother doesn't work. Not that, and I define work very carefully there. It doesn't fly me off the handle. It doesn't, fly her off the handle.
Losing control just puts you in a bad situation.
Exactly. People say, all the time I do radio shows, you can't let your kids talk back to you like that. You got to stamp it out right there. The problem is your efforts to stamp it out just model exactly what you don't want them to learn, which is getting excited and yelling and getting panicky and anxious about it works. Well, no, it doesn't. It actually creates more of what you're trying to get rid of. That's the thing about emotional reactivity. It doesn't just make things worse. It actually creates the very outcome you're hoping to avoid.
So if you have a teenager sassing you,
sure,
what do?
Depends on a lot, but...
Okay, let me give you a scenario,
please.
Okay? I'm going to go to this dance tonight, and I really don't care what you say. I told my friends I was going to be there. You're grounded. No, I'm not grounded. And they stomp out of the house. How do you do with it?
That's a tough choice. Because then I have to recognize my choice. I could go after them. I could call the police to pick them up.
Okay.
I could sit and dial their phone number all over. Ultimately, what I'm going to do is determined by the relationship I already have with that kid. And Scream-Free Parenting is not going to tell you what to do in that situation, except pause. All Scream-Free Parenting really is about is learning to create a pause between stimulus, your child storming out of the house in mortal danger possibly, and response. How do I want to respond in that situation?
My instinct would be to go get her.
Yeah.
Bring her home and ground her.
And that's the choice. And if you can actually think about it, you know what, that's what I need to do, then you can choose to do it. And then you can choose to do it in a calm way, letting your principles drive you, not your anxiety. I can't handle the fact, oh, no.
Right.
Because then once you actually go out to get her, it'll just create another battle. And that's what's actually leading her to run away from you in the first place. Whenever something like that happens, it's a great chance to begin to ask yourself some tough questions about the nature of the relationship. How's the relationship going at this point? And sometimes I have to face the fact that my kids don't respect me, not because they're just disrespectful, but because I'm not acting in respectable ways.
Do you find raising a child, a young child, is more or less challenging than raising a teenager?
I think raising whatever child you have right now is challenging. There is no more challenging than the other, because thinking about what my kids are going to be like when they're a teenager is not helpful. Thinking about what my kids were like when they're kids is not helpful.
They are who they are.
They are who they are right now, and I am who I am right now. And what is my relationship with them right now?
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see in your family practice? Or mistakes perhaps isn't the right word, but...
The toughest thing parents have to face
Okay.
is the fact that kids have a mind of their own, and they actually have lives of their own. That's the hardest part about parenting. You mentioned about letting go. And yet, once you can do it, it's amazingly freeing. With a little kid, think about this. A little kid comes down and says, I'm bored. Well, we respond in two ways. Anger. How can you be bored with all those toys up there and that, that Santa bought you last year or whatever, those things in the garage? How in the world can you be bored? Or we take responsibility for them. Well, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could go outside, or have you called Johnny, or can you do this? Take responsibility for their boredom. Instead, a Scream-Free parent just lets go and realizes, wow, you're bored. Put it right back on them. With an older child, there's difficulties, incredible difficulties. Mom, I can't do this homework. Well, have they asked you to work on the homework?
Oh,
No.
sure.
Well, not by saying I can't do this.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not asking me.
That's true.
That's just throwing it out there. I can't do it with this expectation, and all of a sudden you're going to jump in. And that's the weird thing is, yes, kids have minds of their own and lives of their own, and yet a lot of times they'll ask us to take responsibility for those minds and those lives. They'll ask us to rescue them when they have a project that's due and they haven't done it, and they want us to literally do the homework for them, or they'll want us to help rescue them from the consequences of their choices. And will you, talk to my teacher? I just can't talk to her and all that stuff. And because we can't handle watching our kids suffer, we'll do it. We don't realize what we're robbing them of is the chance to learn from their choices.
I had read recently that is actually beginning to get to be a problem with educators, and perhaps this has run into your wife has run into this, where you've got parents that just won't let go.
Oh, no.
Up into their 20s, where they won't say, okay, I've done the best I can. You're free. Sink or swim, kid.
Sure. And the thing is, I cannot restrict my kids' freedom, and then all of a sudden when they're 18 or 22 say, here's your freedom. They're not going to be equipped to that. Instead, giving them the choices right now. Okay, you know what? You can talk to me like that. What do you think's going to happen if you do? I'm not going to be angry at you. Because, you know what? An 8-year-old talking to me that way is not enough to get me angry. I am in control of my emotional responses, no matter what they do. But we end up like the Incredible Hulk, mild-mannered Bruce Banner, who would, what would he always say every show? Don't make me angry. Right. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Because what's going to happen if I get angry is this chemical transformation within. This monster that you can't see now is going to all of a sudden come out, and I'm going to get muscles. I'm going to get green skin. No matter what I was wearing before, I'm going to have those torn purple shorts on. I don't know how that happened. And in my wake of you making me mad is going to be this path of destruction, right? And I'm not even going to be conscious of what happened. I just know it will have happened, and ultimately, you know what? It won't be my fault. It'll be your fault because you made me mad.
Angry.
And that's what we do with our kids. And sometimes we say it explicitly. Don't make me come up there. Or don't make me pull this car over. As if they could. As if they really could. Well, the second I say it, then they can. We wonder how our kids have too much power these days. It's because we handed it right to them. We gave them our remote control and said, please don't push my buttons. But once they do, and once it works, then they will keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. What we do, instead of telling them not to push it one more time, let them know that it doesn't work. They push it and it doesn't work. And that's what I call rising above the fray, of realizing, what's going on between me and my kid, I need to stop taking personally. My kid's just being a kid. Right. That doesn't mean I don't respond to it. I do. But it does mean that, my responses are up to me. There's nothing they can do to make me respond in any certain way, no matter how many buttons they push, because all kids are searching for power. They're all searching for power. What they really crave is power over their own lives, right? But we don't give them that because we're afraid what they might do with it. So instead, we give them power over our lives by letting them know what controls us. And we hand all our emotional eggs and put it into their basket and say, please don't spill it, because Mommy can't handle it if you make this bad decision. I can't handle it if you actually leave out that door. No matter what words are coming out of our mouths, we're communicating 3. Calm me down. I can't handle that you're making this choice. So I need you to not make that choice so that I can regain my composure. And we wonder who's in control.
A lot of what you're saying makes perfect sense, but I see that as looking backwards. I didn't really get very comfortable in my own skin until my kid was in her late teens and the second one came along. What about the 30-year-old, the 35-year-old who is just ready to tear her hair out and is doing everything that you're talking about? Do you start then when you in your practice by working with the parents?
Absolutely. And that's why I wrote the book, is for that person. Because even the act of reading the book or watching our new DVD series, which is on commercials now, and you can get a first DVD free at screamfreedvd.com. Watching that, reading the book, is itself the first step because you're spending time not focusing on your kids. It's a parenting book that's not about kids. It's about parents. And so that whole act of beginning to think more about yourself begins to shift your mindset. And it begins to get you thinking more about how do I want to behave? Not how do these kids need to behave or else I'm going to lose it. How do I want to behave even if they lose it? And it's amazing the shift that begins to happen where you begin to feel a little more empowered. My kids aren't as powerful. They're only as powerful as I make them. And I can take that back. And then when you get to the end of the book and you read that the first step that I tell you is not to punish yourself. It's not to go buy a chart and put it on a refrigerator and have some reward system or any. It's learn to put on your own oxygen mask first. We've all been on the airplane.
Sure.
We've heard the speech. It says, oxygen mask will deploy, and there's amazing wisdom from the airlines. If I'm out of breath, I can't help anybody.
Right.
But how many of us parents are totally out of breath? We're overcommitted, we're exhausted, and we're underappreciated, and we're wondering, when am I going to get a break? And I talk to so many mothers that they're at the end of the day, they don't want to go to sleep, even though they're exhausted, because tomorrow it just starts all over again. And they're waiting, maybe tomorrow my kids will behave a little better and that'll give me a break. Or maybe my spouse will support me a little more and that'll give me a break. The difficulty is, if ever I get in a position where I'm saying, if only my spouse would do this, if only my kids would do this, then I'm in a totally helpless position, waiting on other people to change, and there's nothing they're going to do. And I'm out of breath. So my number one job is to take care of me, not for my own benefit, but for my kids' benefit. I don't, you'll hear a lot of self-help authors say, you owe it to yourself. to take care of your body or to get yourself emotionally fit or spiritually healthy. No, I say you owe it to your family.
Right.
You owe it to those around you to offer the best you can. It's not your parents. I mean, it's not anybody's job. Think about it just in terms of the obesity crisis in this country.
Right.
It's out of control. It's the number one health crisis in this country. And we all know what to do, but it's incredibly difficult to do it because at some level, it means we got to focus a lot of energy and attention on ourselves. I have to say no to all the demands of the world, all the demands of my family, and go to the gym. That's tough. Feels selfish at some level. But what's the best thing I can do? Because no one else can take care of my body. It's my job.
Right.
It's my number one job. It's the first gift God ever gave me was this body. What am I doing with it? And what I'm doing with it directly affects how I am with my kids. That's why my number one job is to take care of me for their benefit. That's what people can do.
If you do feel out of control, if your kid is hitting all the buttons, and even though it is, you really, really want to take this approach, the kid's hitting all the buttons though, and you're backsliding, what do you recommend? What would you do?
Breathe. Close your eyes. Just think. That's what I do with folks. It's just, again, create that pause. Because so often, it is so easy to think about all the times that we've blown it, all the times that we've lost it. I'm working so hard, and yet I just can't seem to get it together. Think about this. No matter how many tests you've failed, there's going to be another one 20 minutes from now. And another one 20 minutes after that. God, for some reason, God has put kids on this earth to directly test us. That's their job. And they're going to continue to do it over and over and over. And if we really think about it, we pass a lot more tests than we fail. But the failures feel so painful. And it hurts so bad to think, especially when we see ourselves doing the same thing that our parents did to us. And thinking, oh my gosh, I'm creating that same feeling in my kids that I felt when I was a kid. Man, that can hurt. And if it gets to a place where the patterns are so ingrained, then start a relationship with a professional to help people make the changes in their parenting relationships they want to make. It is possible to make all the changes, no matter how many times you've failed before. It is possible because I don't believe you're sick. I don't believe people are sick and in need of healing. People are just stuck. You're just stuck in a pattern. And the great thing about that is, on the one hand, if it's in a pattern between you and your kids, then you need to realize you're part of that pattern. But the great news of that is if I'm part of the pattern, then instead of trying to stop my kids part of the pattern, I can just stop mine. I'm working with this family, this mom, single mother of 5 kids, 13 through 19.
Oh, boy.
Unbelievable. 5 teenagers, right? Every morning with her 13-year-old, she was in this same pattern. They lived close enough where the 13-year-old could actually walk to school, but of course she didn't want to. She didn't want to ride the bus, so she wanted to ride with mom on mom's way to work. So they were in this pattern every morning. You can guess what it is. Daughter would stall, mom would nag, come on, it's time to get ready. I'm coming, and come on, it's time. Did you fix my breakfast yet? All that stuff. Mom would nag. The more she would nag, the more daughter would stall, and we'd just go back and forth, and they'd be at each other's throats, and they'd both be late every single morning. And there's so many of us that are experiencing that type of morning right now, with our kids. And it was easy for my client to pinpoint the kid's part of the pattern. Well, she just doesn't get up on time, and then she expects me to do all this for her, and then she complains that I don't do it right. And so what's your part of the pattern? Well, as we worked more and more, it became easier for her to pinpoint what she was doing to actually perpetuate it. Until one morning, she woke up, she knocked on her daughter's door. Daughter said, "Who is it?" "It's Mom. Can I come in?" She pokes her head in, says, "Just wanted you to know, I'm leaving in 15 minutes, and I would love for you to join me." And then calmly closes the door.
I would venture a guess that the daughter walked to school that morning.
Yeah, well, here's how it happened. 15 minutes came, Mom left. And the way she tells the story, it's great. She didn't even think about her daughter until about noon, and she gets a phone call saying, "Mom, what can I have for lunch?" Says, "You're at the cafeteria. What do you usually have for lunch?" "No, I'm not. You left me, remember? I'm at home." And with every bit of calm she could muster, "You're going to walk to school, and you're going to take an unexcused absence, and we'll talk about it later." Click. So, and again, she didn't even think about her daughter until she got home from work. And her daughter was upset, of course but her daughter ended up going to school and took an unexcused absence, which meant, for the school, that meant zeros on all the assignments she had missed.
Right.
Because Mom wasn't going to write a note. You made a choice, and you're going to have to live with it. But the daughter wasn't that upset because this was a Thursday. The next night was homecoming. And this was going to be her first homecoming. She had a date. Her older sister said she could get dressed with the senior girls. She'd saved up her babysitting money to buy her own dress. Really big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she goes to school the next day, and she learns that the school has other consequences for unexcused absence. Like if you get an unexcused absence the week of a school event, you cannot attend school event. Now, Mom didn't anticipate this. She didn't know this. This wasn't part of her devious plan. But it was a consequence. And, of course, now what do you think daughter's doing? I mean, who's she blame? Of course she blames Mom.
She blames Mom, sure.
Oh, she's wailing, going crazy. Mom, this is horrible. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. My date's coming over. And, and the mom says her older brother, who really didn't even like to touch this girl, was carrying her down the stairs saying, Mom, can you please do something about this weeping child? This mess. Can you please fix it? And, of course, she was tempted. Of course she was tempted.
It would be very tempting.
Oh, my gosh, it's tempting. But what would she have to do to, quote, unquote, fix it?
Well, she'd have to backslide.
Exactly. She'd have to write a note, right? Mm-hmm. And lie.
That's a bad thing to model for your kid.
Exactly. But that's the choice that we face is, as our kids get older, the consequences are no longer just in our domain. Mm-hmm. You've got a 25 and 11. I mean, there's consequences outside of our domain.
Sure.
School, friends, relationships, the law eventually, and their choices have consequences. Well, that's going to happen. It's going to happen that their choices are going to have more and more dire consequences. Do I want them to learn from those consequences now, or do I want them to learn later? And then be looking to me to rescue them because I've been rescuing them their whole lives.
Sure.
No, I want them to learn now with more safer choices and safer consequences. But that means I've got to be able to be consistent. But this mom didn't start off that way, but she was able to get there by focusing on herself, not so much on her kids. Because ultimately, the kids that do best are the ones whose parents do not need them. And that sounds strange, but what kids need most are parents who do not need them. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I don't need you to make me feel loved. Mm-hmm. I don't need you to respect me. I don't need you to validate me as a parent. I don't need you to make the honor roll. I don't need you to behave in order for me to behave. I'm going to be who I'm going to be regardless of how you behave. Because at the end of the day, what allows me to sleep at night is not so much how my kids behave, but how did I behave? Did I do what I needed to do? Did I do my best? That's what will validate me, what I do, not what they do. Now, that doesn't mean parenting's anxiety-free. I'll be anxiety-free when I'm dead. We're just going to worry. Every relationship carries with it a natural anxiety. Mm-hmm. I can try and do away with that by rescuing my kids, but you know what? It just creates more. It just creates more anxiety in the end because that, again, starts another pattern. Each of us are involved in patterns with our kids. Some are good patterns, some are not so good. And our kids, as they get older, will create new patterns of challenge, of test. They're going to bring us new things. You've been through it. You have a 25-year-old, but your 11-year-old's different.
Right.
And you're different. And so the challenges that are awaiting you may have seen similar things, but they're going to be different.
One of the interesting things about this is because I was so young when my first child was born and middle-aged, solidly middle-aged, when the second one came along, I'm much more patient now.
Yeah, there you go. More calm,
much more calm, much more able to just back off and say, well, what are you going to do about that? And rather than, I'll fix that for you.
Exactly. Let me, and you think about homework is the perfect example. Mm-hmm. We hover around our kids. We make sure they do homework. We're aware of their grades more than they are. We're constantly talking with their teachers, all that stuff. We forget whose homework is this?
Right.
Whose grades are these? I mean, that doesn't mean I'm totally unavailable, but it does mean I'm not operating with the assumption that the grades are a family project.
I can help guide you to the answer, but I will not give you the answer. That's not my job.
But my wife, she sees, she especially with seniors, because that year is fraught with anxiety because they're trying to fill out all the college stuff and they're trying to make sure they graduate, and the anxiety just goes through the roof. And you can see what happens. The families that have had a good relationship of more and more freedom each year, and the opposite. And that senior year, all of a sudden, parents start to clamp down because they think it's their final shot, and it just, of course, drives the kids crazy and gets them to rebel. And kids, teenagers, they're masters. They will cut off their nose to spite their face.
Sure.
They will sabotage their own efforts as a way to make a point to mom and dad, even though it makes things worse for themselves. We just get angry at them and just creates more anxiety.
The pattern repeats itself.
And then we end up doing their homework for them. My wife sees it all the time.
You talk about friendship parenting not being a healthy model. What is friendship parenting?
Well, you'll hear a lot of parenting experts say, can't be friends with your kids. You need to be their parent. You're not their buddy. You're their parent. Well, I like being friends with my kids.
Sure.
And I like being their parent. The thing about friendship parenting that I harp on is that it's not my job. It's not my kids' job to befriend me. It's not their job to make me feel warm, to make me feel like a buddy. It's not their job to give me some fill some emotional needs that I'm not filling otherwise.
Okay.
That's not their job. And when I ask them to do that, especially it happens in separated or divorced families, where now you don't have a spouse, and it's a lot of times very easy for the one who's closest to the mother to all of a sudden kind of get into a surrogate spouse type deal where she's helping take care of mom, or she's kind of become, or the man of the, the youngest boy left is now the man of the house. It's not my kid's job to fill any emotional needs of mine. Again, what kids need most are parents who do not need them. And so I like being friends with my kids. It's great, but it's not their job to befriend me.
How much privacy do you give a child?
More than you think. Think about it. My daughter's 8 now. If I want her to have the self-respect to fend off the pawing hands of her boyfriend when she's 17, not to do it because she's afraid of what dad might say, but to do it because she doesn't want that happening.
Right.
You know what? This is my space. You don't invade it like that. Then how do I want to behave as the man in her life now? This means I give her privacy. Means I knock before I enter her door. Means I knock certainly when she's in the bathroom. I knock. Can I come in? No, Daddy, not right now. Okay. Means I don't automatically assume I can touch her and hold her. This doesn't mean we don't touch. Of course we do. But I ask permission. Can I stroke your hair? Can I give you a big hug? And she comes up and gives me big hugs, probably more than I do. If Daddy treats me this way now, not this is a conscious thought, but it just becomes embedded in treating me like that, then that must be what I deserve. We're so afraid of what our kids will do with the privacy, but we don't ever get to see what they do with their privacy. Like you were talking about, closing the door and letting your kids keep their room the way they do. My kids, they need common areas. Game room, got to keep that clean. Bathrooms, they got to keep that clean. But their own room, I'm just not going to get that in battle. You know what? You can keep your room however you want. What's amazing is when they do that, they actually do begin to keep their room. They actually do organize it. It wouldn't be the way I organize it, but it's like the same thing, when you see your 3-year-old daughter come down and she's picked out her outfit for the first time and it doesn't match at all. You're even embarrassed to go out with her, but she's beaming with pride about the fact that she picked it out. That's what happens when we begin to give them their space. They begin to make amazing decisions with it. One of the coolest things that ever happened in our parenting was last year, 2nd grade, homework starting to get increasingly difficult. And I'm reading a book at my daughter, in my daughter's bed. It's 8:15 at night, bedtime. And she all of a sudden, darts up in the middle of the bed. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. What? There's this huge project. When's it due? Tomorrow! It was this leaf project where she had to find different leaves out in the yard, identify them, go on the internet, print out a paragraph and put it on poster board. Big project, She's like, I got to do it right now. I got to do it, And my wife and I are tempted to go, all right, let's go out, let's get the flashlight. And then we just said, she's had 3 weeks to do this. No, it's bedtime. But then we thought, all right, here's what we'll do. We'll set your alarm clock early, 5:15, and we'll set out your coat. We'll even set out a flashlight. And if you want to get up early and go collect leaves, you're more than welcome to do so. Not fully thinking she would do it at all, but I'm giving her the space to make that choice. And I'll tell you, one of the coolest moments of our parenting was 5:15 in the morning. My wife and I still in our bedroom, looking out our window and seeing this little tiny flashlight in the woods.
So she did it.
She did it on her own.
All right.
If I never give her the space to do that, then she never has the chance to do that. That's the beauty of giving them privacy. It's buying my daughter and my son a journal and saying, not only will I never look at this, I'll never even ask if you use it. I just want you to know, here's a place for you to write down what's going on inside of you. That is absolute sacred territory. Like my son the other day was looking in my daughter's diary.
Oh, that's not good.
Cool, dude.
Right.
Not cool. And he was in his room for a long time that day, I think 5 hours. You don't ever do that. I protect my kids' space from each other. That's my job. That's my responsibility to them. But I want to give them increasingly more and more choices over their lives so that they learn what it is like to be a decision maker. And my job is to calm my anxiety as I watch them make those choices. Because sometimes they make the wrong ones. Anytime we do something different with our kids than our parents did with us, they take it personally as an indictment on them and their parenting. And what's amazing is there's still unresolved issues that have to be dealt with between us and our adult parent that come out once we have kids.
It's kind of fun how that works.
Well, I wouldn't call it fun, but it's a job security for me as a therapist.
I bet. It's a life-enhancing experience.
Yeah, there you go. It's another growth experience.
One of the things that you do mention is 8 ways to create space for each of your kids, and all of this makes perfect sense to me.
Except the last one.
Except the last one. Yeah. And the last one is rarely look your kids in the eye when talking with them. I was raised to believe that when you're conversing with somebody, that's good manners. It shows that you're involved in the conversation and paying attention.
Sure.
Why is this bad?
When you're conversing with equals, it's very good manners. You and I are staring at each other right now looking.
Right.
It would be rude for me to look elsewhere.
Okay.
But parents and kids are not equals. Parents are inherently above them in the hierarchy. And when parents look at kids in the eye, it is very intimidating. And it actually clams them up. If every therapist who's ever worked with kids knows, if you want a child to begin to open up with you and trust you, then you get on the ground and you play Legos together. I'm talking about a young child. And you don't look at each other. And you play Legos together. Or you take a puppet out with a young child and you have them talk to the puppet. Even though you're not doing a ventriloquist act, you're still talking openly with your mouth moving, but they will talk and open up to the puppet, but they wouldn't say if they were looking at you because it's inherently intimidating. If I want my kids to really open up with me, then do a common activity together. Play basketball together out and just do it very calmly. Go shopping together. Or if it's little play Legos, we'll do a common activity. And there are times, both stern and serious, as well as lovingly serious and appreciative and affectionate, where looking them in the eye is a great thing to do. Do it rarely.
I have found that the best conversations I've had with my kids, the now adult and the one at home, is in the vehicle.
Exactly.
When they're in the car with me and I've got to be focused elsewhere, but I had never made that connection. And now when I see these DVDs popping up in the minivan, I think you're losing some really great communication time. Do you know that?
One of my partners and I were just talking about it. We just bought a new car and we were tempted to do that. But then we were thinking, but in the mornings when we're driving to school, we actually talk.
Right.
I don't want to start that pattern.
No.
I don't want to miss that time. And that comes when realizing we're in a common activity where we can't focus on each other and our eyes trying to get intimidate them into behaving a right way. No, we can't do that. This is a relationship we're building. Parenting is not it's not a series of techniques we do to our kids. It's a relationship we're developing with our kids. And it's our job to make sure that no matter what, I'm not going to act like a kid myself. The
book is Scream-Free Parenting, Raising Your Kids by Keeping Your Cool. Thank you so much. Available at all bookstores?
Bookstores everywhere. And you can go, again, screamfreedvd.com.
Hal, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Beth. I appreciate it.
We're speaking now with our friends from United Way. They decided to stop by today. We have Jackie Getty with us, Public Relations Manager, or Head Cheerleader, as it is, and Andy Goldman Gray. He oversees the Caring Connection, and he's the head of donor membership. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Caring Connection, that's a volunteering program. I didn't realize United Way had a volunteering program. Andy, tell me about that.
Yeah, United Way utilizes volunteers, over 25,000 a year, really to extend our staff and also extend the staff of our agencies that we partner with. Caring Connection is a program that puts groups of volunteers out in the community at agencies that need help from groups of volunteers.
How long have you run Caring Connection?
Well, we've done some form of Caring Connection for over 10 years now. It started out as Day of Caring, and then it went to Week of Caring. And then we realized that there was really a need in the agencies for volunteering all year round. And companies and other organizations really had an interest in volunteering all year round. So we went to Target and asked them to bankroll us, and they thankfully said yes. And that's how we've expanded to year round.
Can you give us some examples of the holiday projects that can be signed up for through the program?
Sure, we have a whole bunch of projects for Caring Connection that are available right now, and actually we call them holiday projects because they're not just for Christmas Day or Christmas Eve Day or Hanukkah. They can happen throughout the month of December and even into January. So some of the projects are things like throwing a party at a senior center that's run by Common Bond Communities, which is they run low income and senior housing. So you go and you or plan and execute a holiday party for a group of seniors at these housing centers. We also have a project that is at Tubman Family Alliance, which is a group that works with homeless families and people that are trying to get back on their feet. Many of the families don't have money to buy presents, so they set up a little free gift store where parents can come in and shop for presents for their kids. So a volunteer group can go in, help people shop, sort of man the store, help people wrap the presents, and then also we have a child care area so that the parents don't bring the kids in so they can be surprised when they get the presents.
And another fun aspect of that is that volunteers can sign up to actually shop with the kids for their parents. So take them
fun.
through, and whether it's sheets and towels or whatever has been donated, that ends up being a way that the kids can give something to their parents as well.
If as a family you're interested in partaking of this, or if you're interested in volunteering gifts or time, who do they contact?
Well, the best thing to do is, first of all, start right now. We always get calls 2 days before Christmas. We want to volunteer on Christmas, and by then, almost all the projects have been taken. So the idea is start right now, and you can go to our website, which is unitedwaytwincities.org, and then click on the volunteer tab,
Okay.
and then it'll give you some list of projects. You can either take one of the projects that we've sort of formed right there, just give us a call and let us know that you want to do one of those. Or you can put in a project search form, which asks you for some information, like what region of the Twin Cities you want to volunteer in, how long you have to volunteer, what time of day you want to do it.
Okay.
And then we'll find you a sort of a customized project. So we'll go into our database of over 1,500 projects that we have and find the right volunteer project for you.
So, and this is something now that you're doing in December, of course, for the holidays, but this is something that is a year-round thing that you could do if you have time in January and February.
The great thing really about Caring Connection is that we have the relationship at United Way with the agencies where we've sat down with them and said, what are projects that will really help you? If they just have staff that feels overwhelmed or overworked, maybe the project is about, hey, we would like a group of volunteers to come in and spend some time with the kids that are at our agency just to give our staff a break.
Sure.
You could come in, play with the kids on the playground, do an arts and craft project in the park, and then have an ice cream party. We actually did a project like that at United Way ourselves. We did a project like that. And it just gave the staff at the agency that we worked with a break. That staff happens to work with families in crisis. And so their staff was overwhelmed, and to just have a couple hours where they know that volunteers care enough to come in, spend a few hours, and just give them a break was wonderful. But another project may be doing painting and cleaning. We have a lot of projects like that. Andy can tell you about a great one that was kind of a trading spaces, that a company came in and just revamped this entire clinic. And then the Toro company did a wonderful project, which was very much tailored to their expertise and their talent. They brought in their equipment and put in a playground for kids with special needs at St. David's Child Development and Family Services out in Minnetonka. So you can either do one of the projects that we have set up with the agencies where they said we really need this help, or you can say, we have all this equipment, we have all this expertise, here's what we want to do. So like Andy said, 1,500 projects already in the system, plus you can create your own.
Trading spaces. Tell me about that, Andy.
Sure. We had a group from Marsh Inc., which is a insurance company downtown here, who wanted to go and really make a difference in some people's lives. So we put them at an agency called Women's Advocates, which is a battered women and children's shelter in St. Paul, right on Grand Avenue. And they split up into two groups. One of their employee groups took the clients, the mothers and children that were in the shelter, to Como Zoo for the day, which can be really rewarding in its own right. Then while they were gone, another group of employees went and split up, and each room they took and did a trading spaces makeover too. So they got to paint whatever color they chose for that room. They got a budget from their company to buy sheets and curtains and sort of do a little decor in each of the rooms. So it was really awesome at the end of the day when we brought back the kids and the moms from the zoo, and they got to the shelter, and they had left, and it was industrial drab.
Right.
They do what they can with the budget they have, but it's a shelter. And they got back, and everything was bright and sunny, and we saw smiles on the faces of those kids. And if you know anything about shelters, you don't see a lot of smiles usually in shelters, so it was really a rewarding project for us.
Andy, Jackie had mentioned the Toro story. How did Toro get involved with this? Tell me that story.
Well, the Toro company wanted to do a big project, and they have a number of, them for lawnmowers and snowblowers. They also have a lot of professional landscaping products. They have something called the Dingo, which is like an all-purpose machine that can pretty much do anything you want to move earth, dig holes, and those kind of things. And they said, we want to go out and do a project that's really going to utilize that. So we said, okay, who can use that? And at that point, we went out and had a conversation with St. David's, who's always great to work with. And they said, we need a playground for our kids that have special needs. So we went to Toro and pitched them and said, if you can bring your equipment out, St. David's is ready to have this playground put in. So they went out on a day that was a torrential downpour. I mean, mud city.
Oh,
it was
boy.
really bad. And the Toro workers were just amazing. They were out there in Wellington boots,
Power was out in the building.
Oh, boy.
mud up to their knees, and they actually got that playground done that day. They came in and they leveled the whole area.
It was amazing.
They constructed the playground, and again, just to see the face of the kids that live in that shelter It was amazing.
And talking to the executive director out there that day, she said, look at these volunteers. They're out here and it's muddy and it's raining. We love our volunteers. And she also told me that they've had over the years about $1 million worth of work done through Caring Connection. So this is really a valuable program for the agencies, and as well as opportunity for people to really get involved. I think maybe started because we wanted to show people who were giving to United Way where their money was going and how it was being spent, and to really engage them in the process of getting involved with the community, and I think it's definitely grown from there.
Yeah, especially these days when more of the money that an agency has in their budget has to go towards direct service. They sometimes let other things slide and enable to serve more clients more of the time. So they let sometimes their facilities slide a little bit more than they'd like to, which can cause a couple things. The pride of the agency staff and walking into work and having somewhere nice to work. How clients feel about the agency that they're getting services from. So Caring Connection is one of the ways that they can use volunteers to upkeep their facilities and to make things just attractive and warm and inviting for the clients that they're serving.
And for some of them, like for Boys and Girls Club, they've told me, getting some of these employee groups in has also been beneficial, because then the company, like 3M has gone in and done several projects at Boys and Girls Club in St. Paul. Well, 3M saw that there were really some needs at Boys and Girls Club and have then made some other physical donations to the agency. So it's great for the agency in that realm as well.
The United Way fundraising, that's wrapping up for the year, right? How's that going?
We've kind of moved to more of a year-round campaign, but you're right, this still is the time when a lot of the companies tend to run their campaigns in the fall. That has been traditional, and I think a lot still do that. We had a goal of $88 million in total financial resources. That was a $2.5 million jump over last year, so it's a pretty exciting, aggressive goal. And what we've heard is that we think we're going to come real close. We know that Hurricane Katrina, the hurricanes, the natural disasters, did have some impact, and that we're trying to make up about $500,000 that we know was a direct impact from that, where companies said, I'm giving there instead. So we knew we had to overcome that. But what we've heard from our donor relations staff is that we're going to come real close. And we probably won't know for a while, but we're excited. We're optimistic.
That's gratifying.
It's amazing in a year like
this. And with the backing of Target, that's got to really help, too.
What's great about Target, Andy can talk about some of the projects that they've done. I mean, not only sponsoring the program, but actually physically volunteering.
Yeah, out of all the companies in the Twin Cities, they send out the second largest number of volunteers, as well as funding the whole program. So it's really great. They've gone out and done over 50 projects this year, well over 3,000 volunteers that get out and get out to the agencies in the Twin Cities as well. So their workforce is really extending the work that the agencies could do as well.
How old do you have to be? For example, could a Girl Scout troop or a Boy Scout troop pick up a project for the Caring Connection?
Yeah, we have projects for pretty much all ages. We try and keep it over 12 years old, just because under 12 it's hard to keep people concentrating, and I have kids, so I know a lot about that. For those kinds of projects, typically we ask that there's either a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 parent-to-kid ratio, but definitely we can accommodate a lot of kids. One of the projects that's out there right now is Second Harvest Food Bank, who distributes food to other smaller food shelves, has to pack commodities boxes. So they put together little boxes that says, you have this many proteins, you have this many vegetables, et cetera, et cetera. So we can put kids on the line packing the boxes, and it's perfect for their skill level, but it's also really rewarding for them. So we can accommodate groups there. They need up to 20 groups a month to pack those boxes.
And that's a year-round effort.
That's all year round, but it especially is important at the holidays. We did a fun thing around Thanksgiving with them where we did pack a turkey dinner. So Cargill donates a bunch of turkeys to them every year, but then people donate the stuffing, stovetop, mashed potatoes, and those kind of things. So we put together a little Thanksgiving box for people as well.
The United Way is a nonprofit, and you help out a lot of nonprofit organizations. Why is volunteering important to nonprofits?
Well, one of the things that you have to work with, and it's a reality in nonprofits, is that we've got small budgets compared to some of our corporate counterparts. So the number of staff that we can use is limited, but we want to cure the ills of the world. And we can't do that without bringing people in to help us on it. And that's really why volunteers are important, to get people in to help us in our missions, in taking care of the problems in the Twin Cities, creating solutions for those problems. So we have to have volunteers to work with us, or else we can't do it based on the budget and the resources that we have available.
I think if a lot of people knew about all the volunteer opportunities that are out there and how easy they really are to access, they'd be really excited to sign up.
It's not necessarily a huge time commitment unless you want it to be, right?
That's right. It can be a one-time 2-hour investment of your time, or if you really like the project that you did, or you really like the agency that you did the project with, you can do it every month. We do have some groups that every month they'll pack food boxes at Second Harvest, or every month they spend times doing arts and crafts with kids at Boys and Girls Club because they love that project, and they've found that with their work group, it's a real motivating team building thing that they can do. Or with their family, we're really trying to involve more families, more church groups, more neighborhood groups, and to really expand it to that as well, to really get your kids involved for the first time volunteering.
And hopefully it's something that'll stay with them throughout their life.
Absolutely.
If you're interested in volunteering, you could go to the website. We talked about that earlier, unitedwaytwincities.org, and then you click on the volunteer tab.
Correct.
And there's also a phone number, and that's 612-340-7440. And as we alluded to, it's not a huge time commitment unless you want it to be.
Exactly.
If you've got the time. But if you just got a couple of hours...
That's right.
over the
And you
course
really
of a
get to
month?
pick the project that you like. Once you get to the website, it has several categories. It has, do you want to volunteer with kids? Do you want to do an outdoor project? And you can click in that way and just see what projects are available. Tell us what your needs are, and then we'll send you the projects. Or else you can call and we'll talk you through. You know, I live in Bloomington. I want to volunteer with kids. I can only do it on Thursdays. What do you have? And we have projects that'll fit that specifically.
1,500 projects.
Yeah.
They can find something. Of course, the holiday projects our holidays are coming up. How could you best use people as we come up to the holidays?
Well, if they come in and sign in right now, we can match them with any number of projects. The closer we get to the holidays, the less projects we have available. So if they get signed up right now, we can usually match them with the project that they want. But throwing the parties, packing the boxes, helping people shop for those free donated gifts like we talked about, those are all things that we can put you in right now, but we got to get you in early, so if you can plan ahead a little bit, that's the best way to get the holiday project that will be fulfilling for you.
And if you don't get in time for a holiday project, 12 months out of the year,
Exactly.
1,500 projects. Jackie, if somebody would be able to benefit from, say, the toy shopping or the meals, or just needs help, if they were to call United Way 211, could they get the information that way? How does one receive help?
Yeah, absolutely. United Way 211 is a 24-hour free confidential hotline that United Way runs, and last year we had more than 406,000 referrals that we gave out to people that called. So sometimes people call with 5 requests, so we count each one as a referral. But over 400,000 referrals where someone called and said, where is the nearest food shelf? Or how can I be a part of Toys for Tots? Where do I sign up? Things like that. And we can refer them to the agency that's handling that. We also get tons of calls from people who want to volunteer. So again, if you didn't write down the number that Andy gave you to call Caring Connection, you can actually call 211 and say, I want to sign up for a United Way Caring Connection. How do I do that? And so 211 is pretty easy to remember. 211 is something that people can call if they need help with childcare, if they need free legal advice, if they're looking for somewhere to donate their couch. There are hundreds of thousands of reasons to call, and we have more than 40,000 resources that we can connect people to. So it's just a great resource.
When somebody calls 211, who answers the phone?
You actually get a live body. Sometimes, especially on weekends or in the evenings, you do wait a little bit. We've had up to like a minute wait, but typically you get an answer right away. And either way, you are eventually going to get a live body on the phone who can direct you to what you need, which is so nice, because then if you do have a 3-part question to ask somebody, you're actually getting a body who can say, yes, to answer your first question, here's where you need to call. To answer your second question, here's where I can push you. And so I think it's something that everybody wants, is to know they're going to have a live body on the other end. We know that half the calls that we get on 211 are for people seeking basic needs, which is food and shelter and clothing. And this time of year, it's also very common that the call is about utility assistance, saying, I'm not sure, I didn't sign up for the cold weather rule. Can they shut off my heat because I've gotten this enormous bill? What do I do? And so we talk people through that and let them know what the options are out there and who they need to talk to. Also to stress that it is 211 from a landline, but from a cell phone, it's the 10-digit number, which is 651-291-0211.
Phone operators, the people that actually answer the phone, That's a volunteer opportunity that as the United Way. Do you train people for that?
We actually do.
You have to answer a lot of questions.
We actually do. It is a volunteer opportunity in itself. I would say half of our operators are volunteers. The other half are trained information and referral specialists that we hired.
Okay.
But we do put them through a training program, and we have, I think, 5 different languages that are offered.
Oh, that's good to know.
At different times of the day. So we have Hmong operators, we have Spanish-speaking operators, Russian, Somali, and English.
You have it covered.
Yeah, we really do. And this is a time of year where a lot of people aren't sure where to turn. And so 211 is a good starting point.
Now, imagine there are some people out there saying, oh, I would never need any kind of help. You know, my family is doing very well. Thank you very much. But you don't need to have financial problems to need help. Isn't that right, Andy?
That's right. I actually have an experience with 211. After our first kid was born, we were in a frantic search for daycare, and for anyone that's ever done that, you realize how daunting that can be. Where do I send my kid? Who can I trust? How much should I pay? Those kind of things. So I picked up the phone and I called 211, and they talked me through all that. They got me in touch with a resource center for child caring, and they helped me. They printed off a whole list of different child cares in the neighborhood, gave me a packet of what questions to ask when I interview and those kind of things. So it was a real help for us. But I wouldn't consider myself, on the edge or anything. It was just a good resource for me.
So it's a good resource for more than for need. If you need information,
that's correct.
That's something else that they can help you with.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Thanks for sharing that story. And Caring Connection is a good starting point to volunteer.
Absolutely. We'll get you started no matter what you want to do in the community.
The number to call for volunteer information is 211, as Jackie said, but you can also call 612-340-7440, or you can go to the website unitedwaytwincities.org, and there's a volunteer tab that you can click on.
And Caring Connection, which we've been talking about, is, again, group volunteering, so that's groups of 2 to 200. We also have other individual volunteering opportunities through United Way, so when you go to our website, click on volunteer.
Contact the United Way at unitedwaytwincities.org. You could also call 612-340-7440. And for any questions relative to programs or resources that the United Way has that may be of interest to you, you could always call 211. Who would like a copy of Screamfree Parenting? It's available at bookstores. I'm Beth Kidd. Thanks for listening to Northern Lights Radio News. Have a great week.